Hello and welcome to another episode of the MLS UK show. I'm Henry Hewitt, and as always, I'm joined by
Elliot Holman.
Merry Christmas, Elliot. It's our season finale.
We made it. We did it. Another MLS season down. It's aged me. Since Apple TV. It's aged me trying to keep up with all these games. But yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all of our listeners and viewers and followers. And I can't wait for the end of the episode already. I don't even know. I've not even got a plan for it.
I know. Well, for regular listeners, regular viewers of the MLS UK show, you will know that MLS Cup was big, of course. LA Galaxy won, but it is even bigger for how we end the podcast. We'll go into that later on. But I guess let's start with LA Galaxy then. This is kind of a season review, but also looking ahead to the close season and next season as well. So we'll call it a season review. But it's more like, it's just more like a conversation between me and you, Elliot. So I guess we've got to start the conversation with LA Galaxy. 2-1, they beat Red Bulls, 6th MLS Cup. They are the champions. It has finally happened. We've been doing this podcast for, 6 years now, 7 years. And we've been saying how poor LA Galaxy are, but they've finally pulled it out the bag.
They've done it. Yeah, We've seen a lot of bang average Galaxy, and we've seen them fall at the last hurdle many a time as well. But that was LA Galaxy getting the job done and setting their stall out early. What a start by both teams, to be fair. Really, really exciting start. That's what we want from an MLS Cup final. I watched it in this very room, and I don't mind telling you, I had under 5.5 goals on in the game. I was sweating early doors as we had three goals. But LA Galaxy, professional performance for the most part. Lot of early corners, lot of early set pieces. The game settled down, and I really enjoyed it actually.
Yeah, well, you were sweating because of that. I was sweating because I had the house to myself. Poppy was out on a Christmas party, so I thought, this is great, early evening kickoff. I'm going to order a Chinese. I'm going to make the most of it. And it came just on as the match started, which was an inconvenience, but I thought, still, that's fine. These finals, there's always excitement in MLS Cup, and I think that's what's great compared to other finals where they can kind of be working each other out. The majority of MLS Cup finals have loads of goals or excitement, but I thought first 10 minutes it'll be fine. So I'm there plating up my Chinese, goal. Rush back in, watch the goal, go back, still plating up, there's another goal. So yeah, I was sweating because I was rushing from my kitchen to my living room. But eventually when I got settled, then Red Bulls managed to get the goal to make it 2-1. But I'll be honest, at that point, I thought it could be 5 or 6. I thought Galaxy had started better and they could just walk it. And, they didn't in the end. I guess first half was for the attackers. The second half was very much a defensive masterclass from both teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It had to slow down at some point, didn't it? Especially for a final. It was certainly frantic. But, yeah, one for the defenders in the second half. And you kind of got that from the off. I think first 10 minutes of the second half really set the tone. And LA Galaxy, professional performance, got the job done. And it would have been crazy for Red Bulls to even take that to extra time on paper, wouldn't it? After the season they've had in comparison to Galaxy, but they were in it, only a goal off, taking it to extra time or penalties, and ultimately. That's the beauty of MLS playoffs. You're always in with a chance. And Red Bulls have done that the whole way through this year, right until that final hurdle.
Yeah, it's so strange, especially to us Europeans. I'm telling friends of mine about MLS and the MLS Cup, and they're saying about, who's in it. So I'm explaining, and they're like, wait, so Red Bulls finished 7th? And it's not even 7th in the whole MLS. Whatever they were, about 12th, 13th in actual MLS. And I guess you can split this into two. LA Galaxy, you're looking at, apart from winning Supporters Shield or winning the West, they can't improve much, can they? They've just got to remain consistent next year. Whereas for Red Bulls, despite making MLS Cup, they can do so much more improvement. Next season is just about building on it, really, isn't it?
They do well to achieve it again, I think is the takeaway. You know, I wanted to touch on this actually. Do you look at the likes of New York Red Bulls, Atlanta, who had a pretty good run as well? Do you look at them and think next season could be a lot more positive than maybe they anticipated? You know, Red Bulls finishing where they did in the standings, but then going all the way through to MLS Cup. That enables you to entice signings, maybe. We'll come on to that, but that maybe you didn't envisage before. Players who might not have considered going to your club before, saying, "Look, no, we made the final last year. We want to push and we want to go that one step better next year." But in reality, like you say, they finished way down the standings. So our Atlanta fans looking at the season, going, "Yeah, well, maybe we could be contenders." Our Red Bulls thinking, "No, next year's our year." Or do we have to be more realistic?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think this is the thing, is that for Red Bulls, they do need to improve the squad. You know, they got to MLS Cup. That was great. What an achievement that was, especially in the East last year. And they were every team above them, but 2 or 3 in particular who you would have bet your house on getting to MLS Cup before Red Bulls. But they have got a lot to improve. They've got a good building blocks, of course, but they've got they've got areas where they can improve and build on and see how they do next year. And obviously finishing higher in the conference is going to be a priority to them. But also then keeping that resolve, keeping that energy and keeping that determination to get to MLS Cup is something that they'll want to stick with. But yeah, LA Galaxy, it's the opposite. Obviously they want to build, they want to keep what they've had and keep that, what's got them to win MLS Cup. But you don't need to build on much. You just need to just little areas and then just continue how they're doing. Keep the energy like Red Bulls. But, I think it's important for their fan base to keep this momentum and excitement. And I think this is where, you look at Miami in the East and you will already put them as favourites to win the East next year as well. The West being so wide open, this is a great chance for Galaxy to really build something.
And I think it's interesting. It's taught us, I think some people still didn't quite believe that MLS Cup, that the playoffs was where it's at. Miami won their conference, but then didn't really display anything after that. And they've been forgotten about. A huge season where they set a points record. The focus is entirely on MLS Cup. That's what players come from all over the world to try and win, and coaches. And that's what the fans want. So there is an element that, yeah, sure, Miami might walk it again next season, but can they actually turn up in the playoffs? That's where history is written. And this is the beauty of MLS. We've seen Red Bull struggle and they went all the way to MLS Cup.
Yeah, well, a team who are desperate to make MLS Cup next year are Inter Miami. Great season, great regular season. Let it go in the playoffs to Atlanta. Unbelievable. We've spoke about that enough on this podcast during our playoff episodes. But looking ahead to next season, then Elliot from Miami, we spoke with Andrew Wiebe, and he said he can imagine Miami being a cup side, so maybe not necessarily winning Supporter Shield, but trying just to get over the line, win these trophies, and then when it hits the playoffs, really going for it. Kind of a opposite to what happened this season. Pressure's on. They've got a new manager. They've brought in one of Messi's former Barcelona teammates, amongst all the other former Barcelona teammates. It's a busy and it's a big, close season, isn't it, for Miami to get this right this time?
Yeah, I've got a friend, childhood friend, who works in a hotel in Barcelona, and I think that automatically qualifies him for a job at Inter Miami. So he'll be putting his CV in any second. But yeah, I think we're all intrigued, aren't we, by this appointment? Just going to be honest, don't have a huge clue about his credentials, how it's going to go, how it's going to translate to MLS. Sometimes it really works, sometimes not at all. You have to have a huge understanding of how the MLS clubs are structured, how the league is structured. And I don't think any amount of handover notes can quite prepare you for how frantic MLS can be on a Tuesday in Columbus and then on a Saturday over in Seattle. or in Canada playing Whitecaps. So going to be a baptism of fire for him, I'm sure. But we welcome all of these former Barcelona players with open arms, and it's all great marketing for the league, of course.
Of course. For anyone who doesn't know, it's Javier Mascherano, of course, played for West Ham and Liverpool in England before going to Barcelona, and being alongside Messi, Iniesta, and all of that team. Suarez is sticking around as well for 2025, and so is Busquets and Jordi Alba. So them four, I'm sure they'll be joined by another one. There's another former Barcelona player coming at some point. Got to be.
Victor Valdez is imminent.
It could be anyone. Victor Valdez, Puyol, get him out of retirement. It could be. It's all part of the fun with MLS and Inter Miami. But with that fun and as exciting as it is to see them and watch them, and some of the games they've had this season, like the the New England Revolution, the last game where they turned it around. And was it 6-2 in the end? I think it was. It just turning it around from being, a couple goals down. It's it's all exciting, but it will mean nothing in the end unless they win MLS Cup. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that ends up next season. Right, so I want to move on to a few more bits. From looking ahead to next season, but just to round off this season, I've got to ask you about Orlando. Of course, you've spoke about it on our playoff episode because you got knocked out to Red Bulls in the end. Rumours now, strong rumours, and it's probably could be announced by the time this goes out that Facundo Torres is going to be leaving as well. Where do you see Orlando now, and what do you think for next season? Have you had your big chance, or is there more to come?
I think that was a big chance. There's no other way of looking at that. It's a huge opportunity. Dropping the ball against Red Bulls was extremely frustrating, to be honest, because Orlando have been the much better side over the course of the season. And it was a huge opportunity. Will they get it again? Facundo Torres has been a legend for Orlando. He's the top scorer for the club, and he's obviously a loss. The beautiful thing for Orlando is that they've had two of the top 10, I'd say, attackers in the league sat on the bench for most of the season. So they're pretty stacked in attack. Duncan Maguire will come in and more than do a job. So we talked with Andrew Wiebe about when they lost Antonio Carlos at the back. I think that's a much bigger loss because they didn't have as much cover at the back. But Facundo Torres, difficult to replace. Tricky character. But of course, the club gets a lot of money to spend from this transfer, so we'll see how they get on.
Yeah, well, that's it for Orlando. It's I guess it's about reinvesting. The MLS have kind of announced this afternoon as we talk on Thursday. They've actually revealed this time how much GAM teams are getting, and of course, all of this comes into it. Orlando, you sell a player, I think you get to keep maybe 3 million of it for GAM, and it's Orlando, much more than a lot of other teams in MLS, actually have those assets that they can do that with. I know Maguire's staying, but down the line he could easily go for some money. So it's all about reinvesting, and I guess for Orlando it's about how you build. But I do think everyone looks at Miami next season, and rightly so. Orlando, I think now could probably put themselves in that next bracket along with the likes of Cincinnati. Maybe not Columbus because they've actually gone and won stuff, but that sort of Cincinnati bracket as being contenders. But you've got to show it, and I think whereas in the years we've been watching MLS, we've not really seen LA Galaxy until now really show their worth. We have seen Orlando show promise and then fall away. So I guess it's make sure you don't do that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big off season. See how they spend that money when it comes in. See which areas they manage to strengthen. I'd like to see some investment in the defense. Can they keep a hold of Gelese in goal? There's a lot up in the air, and there will be for every single team in MLS. So fascinating off season as always.
It is, and this is now the opportunity to get to talk about Atlanta United because we're going to move on to the managerial changes. There's been a lot. There's been a lot since the end of the regular season. There's quite a few in the closing weeks of the regular season, actually, as well. Now, there's a few spots that haven't been taken yet. Atlanta being one of them. Philadelphia, Toronto. There's New York City FC as well. But Atlanta have been linked, speaking of NYCFC, with Ronnie Dyler in the last few days. From someone from the outside, he's an MLS Cup winner. Do you think this is a good appointment? This is a surprise for me. I wouldn't have put him necessarily as coming back to MLS, let alone with Atlanta.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because would you turn your nose up at someone who's won MLS and knows the league and has managed in the league recently, post-COVID? You'd go, yeah, give him the job. But then when you hear Ronnie Dyler, you think, oh, I maybe wouldn't have thought of him. So yeah, interesting move if this comes off for Atlanta, but they could certainly do a lot worse. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Jim Curtin. Like, is he jumping straight in? Is he going to make himself available? I'm really intrigued to see because he would be snapped up.
Yeah, I guess for Jim Curtin, he can just sit back and watch what happens, can't he? Like you said, he's going to be snapped up eventually, and this is the thing for him is that if he makes that move too soon, we've seen before. You could look at Caleb Porter, who's had a great time in MLS, but then his last job wasn't necessarily as good. So these head coaches, Bruce Arena, has done it in the past before as well. Greg Berhalter has now come in at Chicago. He is in this bracket as well of managers that have done well or all right in MLS, but then they make that next move. And the thing now for Jim Curtin is if he makes the wrong next move, suddenly you go from being the hottest head coach available to being not so much, and then he'll be like the likes of Caleb Porter and Bruce Arena. He'll get jobs for as long as he wants them. He'll just go around the league like they're doing, but your options become less and less. So let's go through a few of the managerial changes. Of course, Mascherano at Miami we've mentioned. Bruce Arena at San Jose Earthquakes. Really interesting one there, looking for someone to really take over that whole franchise, and I think he can do that. So I'm interested to see how he does with that franchise who have failed quite a lot over recent years. Nico Estevez coming at Austin, Greg Berhalter at Chicago Fire, Eric Quill at FC Dallas, and a name who we are familiar with, and other English football fans are familiar with, Olaf Melberg has come in at St. Louis as well.
Olaf Melberg, proper throwback for us Brits, that Olaf Melberg. And lots of interesting appointments. I think the Bruce Arena one intrigues me a lot. Berhalter as well. I think that could be a really good appointment. So a couple of real American stalwarts to really see how they can improve their sides. And then Olaf Melberg, randomly. I'm here for it. I'm so here for it. It's peak MLS, this is.
It is. I think St. Louis are in for an interesting close season because they did well in their first season. Did amazingly well in the first few months of that season. Eventually went out in the playoffs to SKC, which of course was probably not the team they wanted to be eliminated by. And then last season was that sort of difficult second season. We've seen it with a few clubs now. Austin, we kind of saw it with them as well. So now they're going into their third season. They've got the fan base. They've got the building blocks there to push on. It's always going to be difficult, especially when you've got the likes of Galaxy and LAFC and Seattle, more established franchises within your conference. But, if they get this right, and maybe they need a Melberg to come in who isn't totally, accustomed with the league, but it's a fresh ideas. It's a fresh philosophy. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one comes about as well.
Can Olaf Melberg win MLS Cup? That's the test. Can someone come in and not just take a team to the playoffs, because you've got a really good chance of making the playoffs. Can someone come into MLS fresh and take on the likes of Bruce Arena, Greg Berhalter, Caleb Porter, and can they go the distance? That's what we want to see.
Yeah, well, it almost happened with Red Bulls, but then Greg Vanny's MLS experience won it in the end. Right, let's move on now, because there's been quite a few signings. I don't want to go through all of them. In fact, I actually want to leave this until the close season and start of next season, because again, it's difficult to really you can analyze for the sake of analyzing signings at this stage within MLS, but there's a couple of rumours. We've mentioned Facundo Torres. There's a few things that have gone through that I want to mention. Diego Gomez is coming to Brighton from Inter Miami, so he's someone, when we obviously mention the likes of Messi and Suarez, but Diego Gomez has really been a breakthrough, hasn't he, for Miami, and I think they're going to miss him going to Brighton.
How lovely is it to see players going the other way as well? MLS. Not just producing players, but putting players on a big stage, putting players next to Lionel Messi, and winning, setting record points tallies, and then sending them to the Premier League. It's incredible. We want to see more of this.
A player who did come over to the Premier League from MLS and now looks like he could be heading back. Tom Bogart said this evening that Miguel Almiron could be heading to Charlotte FC. I'd love to see him back at Atlanta, so I'm a bit disappointed about that. But Miggy, his Premier League sort of time has been a bit weird, hasn't it? Because he started off a bit slow, then had an amazing 3, 4, 5 months last season, and now it's kind of gone back to being slow. Is it the right time for him to move back? Would you like to see him stay in the Premier League? What are your thoughts on that?
I think a change of club could have been good for Miggy in the Premier League, if I'm honest. Just to freshen him up. He's clearly talented. He's clearly good enough to play in the Premier League. We've seen that. So I would have liked to have seen him go to another side, but I will welcome him back to MLS with open arms. There's not a single MLS club that wouldn't take him. So fair play if Charlotte can get that deal done. Absolutely fair play. Absolute perler of player. And I think we've all got a secret love for Miggy.
Yeah, we have. 30 years old now. He's played 183 times for Newcastle.
Wow.
Been there since 2019. You forget how long he has actually been there for. His legacy in MLS was that long. But I think I'd love him back at Atlanta. I'm sure there's a part of you that would have him at Orlando, despite his Atlanta roots as well.
Absolutely.
But it'd be good to see him in Charlotte, being united with with Dean Smith, another former Premier League, managerial star, shall we say?
Premier League, Championship, whatever.
And finally, an MLS UK show legend. OGs will remember we used to mention him all the time. Lars Abubakar has moved from Colorado to Dallas. So I think this, Abubakar obviously great. He's great MLS career, but I think a move was really needed for him. I think bit of freshening up in Dallas.
Yeah, and it's quite common in MLS, isn't it? Players move fairly freely between clubs in MLS with trades and whatnot. So yeah, wouldn't be the same without him. Couldn't do a season without him, could we? So great player, great legacy, and a welcome addition to any roster, isn't he?
He is, yeah. And I guess Dallas are one of his sides. I'm going to move on to really looking back at last season and looking at teams who perhaps underwhelmed, teams who overachieved. You definitely put Dallas. I know I wouldn't have necessarily said that Dallas were going to finish 3rd, 4th, 5th. I mean, they have done in the past, and we've become used to them doing that, and perhaps overachieving for who they are amongst the bigger names, like I mentioned before, with the LA teams and Seattle and that. But Dallas finishing 11th this year is not what we used to from them. They've definitely underachieved, haven't they?
Yeah, they really have. And there's one of the teams that's been around the whole time, and there's teams it just seems bizarre. Like that stretch we had with LA Galaxy for a long time. Seems bizarre. I remember watching MLS, 8-9 years ago, and Dallas were great Roland Lamar out on the wing, like just absolutely dominating teams when Pareja was in charge, actually. So, it'd be good to see a return to form from Dallas.
Yeah. I know Dallas fans have spoke to us before and said that I don't think they were expecting much themselves last year, and it kind of took a downward turn. But hopefully, Dallas can get back on it and rise back into the playoffs next year. Is there anyone else? Who else, off the top of your head, who else do you think's underachieved? Who did you expect to see more from this season?
Is it weird to say LAFC?
Wow.
I think there was a few moments where things came undone for LAFC when they could have really dominated the league in the same way that Inter Miami did, and they definitely could have got to MLS Cup and probably would have won it at that point. So I think, all things considered, I think they unfortunately have to get a mention. Conceded a last minute winner, things that make a huge difference. And I have to feel that Orlando are in there as well. I think they had the tools to go the whole way. They had the tools to win MLS Cup, and they didn't. And so, okay, you'd be happy that they got as far as they did, sure. But if we're talking about teams that have underachieved, I think that's Orlando City.
Yeah, well, this is the question, isn't it? Is comparing a regular season to your to your playoffs, because like you said there, Orlando definitely have underachieved. With the opportunity that we had in the playoffs, and then you look also with the likes of obviously Miami, but Columbus and Cincinnati. What great opportunities for them to win, and they let it slip. And I think if you're though looking further down the conferences, and if you're looking at teams who perhaps should be doing better, of course you'll look at Toronto. Insignia, I don't even think they've secured his rights. So that says a lot for what's happening there at the moment. I guess DC, when you got the league's leading scorer, you should be really making the playoffs. So I put them into that bracket. Philadelphia, I know their fans, similar to Dallas, have kind of looked at this season and seen the holes and seen what's gone wrong there. So I don't think if you'd asked them at the start of the season, then 12th would have been a surprise. But as the season went on, I don't necessarily think it was for them. And then you look in the West, and I think continuously we have this conversation about SKC. They show glimpses, and it just isn't working out. There's questions about Peter Vermees. We asked him on this podcast as well about has his time come, and I think this season's a big one, really, for SKC to see what Philadelphia do. Because if Philadelphia go on and have a successful season, then they must be able to look and go, they made a change after a guy who got a legacy there. Do we do the same? And yeah, I just don't quite see it with SKC at the moment.
Yeah, I think Seattle are in that bracket as well. It's time to break what's become a bit of a cycle, a bit of a habit. Big teams with big histories, and the league grows and grows and grows, and it means that someone always has to miss out. And recently it's been some of these teams that have historically always been there or thereabouts. So yeah, it's time for your SKCs, for your Seattles, San Jose. Come on, it's time now. LA Galaxy have shown you the way that you can do it. You can have a revival.
So if we're looking at overachieved, then obviously Red Bulls are the team that overachieved in the end. I think there's two managers in particular that we perhaps need to apologise to for our predictions at the start of the season. In the West, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think Colorado would get anywhere near the playoffs with Chris Armas in charge, and they had. They got in. And then in the East, over to you, Elliot Holman. Charlotte FC finished 5th.
Yeah. It's still do you know what the worst thing about it is? It still wrangles me. Like, it's so hard to say anything positive when someone's just ruined your club that much. Like, sad, isn't it? Because you and I kind of wrestled with saying this most of the season, but I'm just going to be honest. Final episode, right? We all love MLS. and it's improved a lot, 100 times over since you and I started this podcast. But it's not the Premier League, and it's not quite the Championship. And I think Dean Smith, maybe that's a level. Maybe it's, maybe that's a level. And that's not to be sniffed at, because Phil Neville's not found his yet. He's struggled a lot. And so there you go. There's something positive I'll say about Dean Smith. He's found his level. It's MLS, and MLS ain't a bad place to be.
No, it's not. Highest ranking British head coach in MLS last season. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we'll see with Charlotte. If they sign in Miggy, then that's a great signing for him, and he will. I think we needed a bit more going forward, and he will definitely give him that. So I'm looking forward to see how they'll do next season. Right, let's round it off then. I'll tell you what, let's look to next season a bit more. Who are you looking at next season? What teams are you looking at? Who are you intrigued to see what happens?
As I mentioned, Atlanta, do they kick on? Scraped in the playoffs, and then, had some big results. Miami intrigued me. Miami as a whole club intrigued me. It's so fragile. It's so big and so good, but so fragile. And it could go so far one way or so far the other at any opportunity. That's going to be wild to watch. And then Galaxy. Did Galaxy really kick on? And do they just become, do they become a side that are chasing a 7th MLS Cup? It's huge. Charlotte with Miggy, big, huge. Love that. So yeah, lots to keep an eye on next season. And San Diego as well.
Yeah, well, they're my team to watch, actually. San Diego. We've got to mention them. San Diego FC are the newest franchise. I absolutely love a new franchise in MLS.
Yeah.
I love it. I hope they go on forever. I hope all 50 states have 2 teams each, and we just continue this. I hope there's 100 teams.
No relegation.
In the league. No relegation.
80 teams make
the
the playoffs.
Yeah. Can't wait to see how San Diego do. Mikey Varas, head coach, former US men's national team assistant coach. It's his first club managerial role. They've got Andreas Reyes from New York Red Bulls, which, I mean, there's all sort of conspiracy theories going on with this one, and what happened at MLS Cup when he had to pull out just before the match, and kind of similar to what Ronaldo did in the '98 World Cup on a, I would say, a lesser scale, but not so much. They've also signed Godoy from Nashville. Obviously, was at San Jose, so there's some MLS experience there. Thomas Angel, Juan Pablo Angel's son, is signed as well. I'm really intrigued to see how they do. I hope they get the fan base behind them. When you look at the likes of St. Louis and Austin, who we've had recently, and they brighten up MLS, and it's so exciting. Like when Charlotte came in for their first game as well, it's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they do. I think it's important as well for new franchises not to put too much pressure on themselves, because we have seen when LAFC came in and stormed it and teams like that, but we have also seen teams come in and just stink the place out. So I think there's a bit of realism there. Just enjoy your first season and try and do as well as you can. Perhaps make the playoffs a challenge for it, and then build after that.
Absolutely. St. Louis taught us a lot. You can't judge a team by its roster.
Right, well, I guess that's it for this episode, and that's it for 2024 on the MLS UK show. And I guess now this is the time that everyone's been waiting for, because you've had nearly 2 weeks to come up with how we're going to end the show. So
I haven't thought about it until we literally started doing the episode, and the whole episode I've been like, I've got to say something iconic. That's never happened in my life.
So I'm going to start saying my bit as I normally do towards the end, and then you are going to come in with your new catchphrase for at least another 12 months. So thanks very much, everyone, for watching. If you're on YouTube, then please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and you'll be notified whenever we release a video. Comment on this video. Tell us what you think of what we've said, and tell us what you're looking forward to in 2025 as well. If you've been listening on your podcast provider, then thank you so much Please listen to as many episodes as you can over the close season of the MLS UK show. We've got years of this that you can listen back to. And please leave us a rating. But Elliot, if you are to leave us a review and a rating, there's one rule and one rule only.
Like a new time zone. It's LA +1. 5 stars. The maximum is 5 stars. So if you could give us that, and then one more. Thanks.
Probably have to work on that over close season. We'll come up with something. Good start, though. It could be something different every week. Who knows? If you've got a suggestion, then get in touch with at MLS UK Show on all the socials. But I guess what's left for us to say is thank you so much for everyone who has watched the podcast on YouTube or listened on your podcast provider. Everyone who's left us a rating as well. Yeah, and have a very good end to 2024. Merry Christmas, and have a wonderful 2025 where we will return.
And we'll be looking all sexy like LA Galaxy. I'm going to stop now.
Yeah.
I'll have a
right. I've been Henry Hewitt.
I won't tell you my name because then you can't abuse me. Have a wonderful Christmas.
Bye-bye, Elliot Holman. See ya.